Yaani mimi ndio nilikuwa mhubiri mwenye ninaongea Nairobi. Yakukua kidi sikuwa na pesa, ndio maana nikaanza hata kuitisha 310. Sema panda mbegu ya 310 na tusibishane bishane. Sikutaka kwangu. Umaskini ulikuwa umenitandika sawa sawa, lakini ilikuwa na anointing.
In most industries, if you want to become a billionaire, you have to build a product. You need factories, logistics, supply chains, and thousands of tired employees. You need to worry about taxes, regulations, and market crashes. But in Kenya, there is a shortcut, an industry where the product costs nothing to manufacture because the product is hope. An industry where the customers don't just buy the product, they subscribe to it for 10% of the income every single month for the rest of their lives. Welcome to the business of salvation. Today we're not talking about theology. We're not talking about who is going to heaven and who is going to hell. That is not my department. Today we're following the money. For the last 3 decades, Kenya has seen a shift. We've gone from the quiet stone churches of the missionaries to the loud neon-lit arenas of the CEO pastors. Men and women who have rebranded the gospel into a path for immense personal wealth. The contrast is uncomfortable. On one side, you have a congregation that is often struggling to put food on the table, facing unemployment and rising taxes. On the other side, you have leaders driving cars that cost 20 million shillings. Take Pastor Ezekiel. He commands a following that fills a 40,000 capacity arena that is bigger than most football stadiums. Reports and investigations have allegedly valued his empire, and yes, it is an empire in the billions. We are talking about an ecosystem that includes a hotel, an international school, and a petrol station, all within his ministry's complex. Then there are the Kenyans, the pioneers of the Instagram-ready church. Their lifestyle also allegedly includes a sprawling estate in Runda and stories of private jets. And they're not the first to do this. This is a model imported directly from the United States. In America, pastors like Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar have defended owning private jets worth millions of dollars. They tell their followers that a commercial plane is a tube full of demons, and they need luxury to hear God clearly.
Why have you said that you won't fly commercial? You said that it's like getting into a tube with a bunch of demons.
No, listen to me just a second. Not the people. If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
How much money did you pay for Tyler Perry's Gulfstream jet, for example?
Well, for example, that's really none of your business.
In Kenya, the justification is similar. They call it evidence. The luxury car is not just a car, it is proof that the God works. If the pastor is rich, it means the prayers are working. If you are poor, well, you just haven't planted enough seeds yet. But where does this money actually come from? Is it the tithes? Or is something darker happening in the shadows of the pulpit? You've heard the whispers, the allegations of wash, money laundering, the gold scams, the politicians bringing bags of cash to the altar to sanitize their stolen funds. In this video, we're going to break down the finances of Kenya's religious industrial complex. We will look at how they make it, how they spread it, and why the government is certified to touch them. But first, we have to understand the scale of the wealth. Now that we've seen the mansions and the cars, we have to ask the uncomfortable question: how? How does a preacher, who technically has no salary, afford a lifestyle that most CEOs in Kenya can only dream of? The answer lies in a business model that is as brilliant as it is controversial. It is called the seed faith algorithm. In traditional Christianity, giving was about supporting the church's work or helping the poor. But in the modern prosperity gospel, the script has flipped. Giving is now a transaction. The theology is simple. You have a problem, a sickness, unemployment. That is not just bad luck. It is a spiritual blockage. And to clear it, you need to plant a seed. You give money to the so-called man of God, and in return, God is obligated to give you a miracle. No one perfected this model quite like Pastor Victor Kanyari. You remember the 310? For years, he told Kenyans to send 310 shillings, referencing the Bible verse Malachi 3 verse 10 to receive a blessing. It seemed like a small amount, affordable, but it was a volume game. If 10,000 people send 310 shillings, do the math, that is over 3 million Kenyan shillings in a single broadcast. And here's the kicker. Years later, Kanyari actually admitted it. He said,
yani mimi ndio nilikuwa mhubiri mwenye ninaongea Nairobi. Yakukua Ezekiel hawakuwa, Ng'ang'a hawakuwa. Mimi ndio nilikuwa naongea hii the city of town. Kidi sikuwa na pesa, ndio maana nikaanza hata kuitisha 310. Sema panda mbegu ya 310 na tusibishane bishane. Sikutaka kwangu. Umaskini ulikuwa umenitandika sawa sawa, lakini nilikuwa na anointing.
he confessed that the anointing was not paying the bills. Money was. It was not theology. It was a poverty elevation strategy for him. But the industry has evolved beyond just asking for cash. Now, they have products, high margin spiritual merchandise. Take Pastor Ezekiel. At his height, thousands of people will flock to his center in Mavueni. They're not just there to pray, they're there to buy living water and prayer handkerchiefs sold for 100 shillings or even more. 100 shillings sounds cheap, right? It's accessible to the poor. But let's look at the economics. If you have 40,000 people in a service, and half of them buy a bottle of water, that is 2 million shillings in revenue. In one day, the profit margin on that water is likely over 900%. This is where it gets tragic. We are talking about people who are desperate. People who are confused. They view these leaders not just as men, but as semi-gods or angels. If an angel tells you that buying this handkerchief will cure your cancer or get your son a job, you don't look at the price tag, you pay it. It is essentially a tax on desperation, a transfer of wealth from the poorest people in our society, those who can least afford it, to some of the richest. And sometimes you even have to pay just to enter the room. We have seen instances where registration fees are introduced just to see the pastor. It's a paywall for salvation. If you don't pay, you don't get the prayer. As Canary once said, if you're not my congregant, go back to Catholic, you're not my friend. We are going to dive deeper into the darker side of this industry, the money laundering and the politics in just a moment. But before we do, if you think we need more transparency in our religious institutions, hit the subscribe button. It helps me in making videos like this. Also, do you think churches should be taxed? Or should their finances be completely transparent to the public? Drop a yes or no in the comments below. If selling water for a 900% profit is the light side of this business, we are now entering the dark side. In Kenya, there is a street term for financial crime, wash. It refers to cleaning dirty money, whether it is from gold scams, drugs or corruption. And according to experts and investigators, it is alleged that one of the best places to wash dirty money is not a bank, it is a church. Think about it. Churches are cash intensive. Every Sunday, millions of shillings in physical notes are dropped into baskets. Until very recently, there were almost no requirements for churches to file tax returns or undergo external audits. If you're a criminal with 10 million shillings in illegal cash, you can't just walk into a bank. They will ask questions. But you can donate it to a building fund. The pastor uses that money to buy equipment or property, sometimes even buying it from you or your associates. The money is now charged expense. It is clean. We have seen persistent allegations linking some flashy pastors to gold scams and international fraud rings. The accusation is that the man of God uses their reputation to vouch for a deal. If a bishop introduces you to a gold seller, you trust them, you lower your guard, and that is when you get scammed. But the biggest source of questionable money is not gold scammers, it is politicians. In Kenya, the church and the state have a symbiotic relationship. Politicians need votes. Pastors need capital. We frequently see politicians donating millions of shillings in cash at Sunday fundraisers. This has actually caused a civil war within the church. Leaders from the mainstream churches, the Catholics and Anglicans, have started rejecting these donations. They call it dirty money. They argue that the church is being used to sanitize the proceeds of corruption. But for many independent CEO pastors, money has no gender and no sin. They accept it gladly as long as the envelope is fat. No questions are asked. This brings us to the crucial distinction. Not all churches are run the same. The Catholic Church, the SDA or the Anglicans usually have centralized financial structures. The priest does not own the church. He is an employee. There are councils and audits. Compare that to the modern ministry. Here, the bishop is the founder, the CEO, and the signatory. The church assets, the cars, the lands are often associated with their personal family wealth. There is no board of directors to say no. Now, let's be fair for a second. Running a mega church is expensive. Lights, cameras, sound systems, electricity, security, rent. These big ministries have full-time employees, sound engineers, ushers, cleaners, media team. They have real bills to pay. They are operating like media production companies. And just like any company, they need revenue to survive. But this raises a massive question for us as a society. If a church operates like a corporation with employees, profit margins, and CEOs driving luxury cars, shouldn't it be taxed like a corporation? Or does the label church give them a free pass forever? The government is starting to ask this too. The KRA is now looking at commercial activities, the hotels, the schools, the guest houses run by these ministries, and demanding their share. But while the government worries about taxes, something much worse is happening on the ground. Because when you combine unchecked greed with absolute spiritual authority, people don't just lose their money, sometimes they lose their lives. We have talked about tithes, we have talked about seed faith, we have talked about money laundering. But in 2023, Kenya learned the terrifying truth of where this road ends. Shakahola, over 400 bodies discovered in shallow graves. The world saw it as a cult story, a story about religious madness. But if you look closer, it was also a financial story. It was reported and alleged that before his followers were told to serve themselves to meet Jesus, they were given one final instruction: sell everything you owned. Followers liquidated their homes, their cattle, and their land. They handed the cash over to the leadership. It was the ultimate asset stripping. The salvation was not just a ritual, it was a way to eliminate the claimants to that money. The followers died destitute, while the organization absorbed their wealth. And this was not an isolated sale. State investigations revealed huge cash transactions linking the Shakahola leadership to other major players in the industry. It hinted at a syndicate, a network of money moving through the religious sector, completely invisible to the authorities until it was too late. This tragedy forced the government to finally act. We're now seeing proposals for the Religious Organizations Bill. The state wants to treat churches more like NGOs or companies. They want annual financial returns. They want to know where the money comes from and where it goes. There is even a proposal to fine preachers 5 million shillings or jail term for 10 years if they use false miracles to extort money. But the pushback is fierce. The clergy argues that this is an attack on freedom of worship. They ask, who is the government to decide what is a miracle and what is fraud? And it is a fair question. If you start regulating faith, where do you stop? But we have to end with the most important part of this equation: the customer, you and me, the Kenyan citizen. Why does this industry thrive? Why do people who have so little give so much? It thrives because of despair. In an economy where hard work doesn't always pay, where youth unemployment is high, and the cost of living is crashing, the church offers the only thing the government does not: hope. When you're desperate, a seed of 100 shillings looks like a rational investment in a supernatural breakthrough. So, is it ministry or is it manipulation? Is it faith or is it finance? The line has become so blurred that I don't think we can see it anymore. I want to know what you think. Is your pastor or religious leader transparent with the tithes? Have you ever been pressured to give money you did not have? Share a story in the comments. Let's start a conversation that is long overdue. If you found this video eye-opening, please share it with someone who needs to see it. Maybe share it in your family WhatsApp group. I know that might cause some drama, but hey, the truth usually does. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matter.